Hi students, welcome to another session. So far we have completed the unit 2, that is methods of psychological inquiry, and in this session we'll try to recall all the important concepts and discuss the activities and review questions so that you will have an overall idea of that unit, and this will help you in the revision. So I want to deal completely with this uh, like as a revision session for the whole unit, and let us start. So I think even I have explained this area, let us have a just a gist of this session, and uh, like what is the unit 2 intended to, that is how psychologists study behavior or work, what methods are used to study behavior. In the earlier session, like in the uh, say in unit 1, we understand what is psychology and what are the applications, etc. In the unit 2, we'll try to understand uh, how psychologists work. So that is the main theme of this unit. And how do they collect data, how do they understand the behavior, what are the methods used, how do they explain like the interactions, or how do they write the reports in explaining the behavior. So all these terms will be covered in this unit. And then there is another important thing, like what is the goal of psychological inquiry. So these are the 5 steps, that is description of the behavior, prediction of the behavior, explanation of the behavior, control of the behavior, and application of the knowledge. So these are the key points describing what is the behavior so far, and predicting what can be the consequences, what are the results of that behavior. If you say, generally, if you take happiness, you will have good health. If you have angry, it is a negative emotion, and you will have some negative health and behavior in the general days. Like these are the examples. And explanation, how did you act in that particular situation? And control of the behavior, yes, anything which is negative for your health should be controlled. And application of the what are all happened in this has to be remembered and applied further in any new situations. Next to that is steps in conducting research. So goals we have done, and steps in conducting research. So scientific, so there are 2 steps. Yeah, the scientific method, and uh, as we have naturalistic methods, like psychology as a natural science and a social science, it can be purely scientific, and it is a purely you can say natural behavior. So still it is a growing science. We have to have the open mind to be a day-to-day learner by the experiences. In the scientific method, what are the steps of the steps involved in it, or any the how to conduct the research. The first main thing is you have to have a problem. That is, what problem you are dealing with have to be understood. And then you have to collect the data. And then you will have some results which the problem have some answers. So these are the behaviors which are happening. These are the conclusions we can draw from. So drawing conclusions and revisiting the research conclusions. So what are what you have learned in that particular uh, behavior, particular problem, the effects of study hours on students. By reading for the more study hours, the results are positive, like the results are high. The less study hours, there is an impact of on on the results, like less marks, committing mistakes, etc. So in that way, a problem and the solutions, and then revisiting the knowledge. Even this is also applied in the everyday day-to-day life. If you have encountered any problem, you can follow the steps, and I can go forward by learning something. Okay, and this is the scientific method, and there is another method for a natural observation, that is interpretative method. Interpretative method is very close to, uh, like you can say, in the earlier unit you have discussed about William Wundt interpretation. The interpretation behavior is very subjective, that the participant will be explaining his or her emotions so that we can understand them. This is the interpretive method, and then after conceptualizing the problem for understanding, this is the steps involved so far, and then we will move to the nature of psychological data. In the nature of psychological data, what are the types of data uh, we can be collecting? Data from an important input in data. Just data form an important input in psychological inquiry. So yes, data is really important. Data is nothing but you are trying to make them into words, the behavior into words, the behavior into numbers, into an understanding, making sense out of the observation what you have collected. Data approximate the reality to some extent. Yes, you cannot explain everything, but to some extent the data will be explaining, will have a meaning, provide an opportunity to verify and falsify our ideas, hunches, and notions. Yes, whatever you are thinking, after collecting the data, you can draw some conclusions. With that, you will learn something out of the data. Data are not independent entities. Yes, they will be depending on the person who are exhibiting the behavior. Located in a context and are tied to method, theory, and that govern process the data collection. Yes. Yeah. For example, study of behavior, classroom behavior, where the context is classroom. It can be any class, but the students in a classroom behavior is observed in particular context. So, and for example, in the bystanders effect, you will be observed in a smoke smoke room where the smoke is released. So there is a context. For example, floods affected the human beings. Yes, floods, how they affect, you have to go to the situation and then ask them how they got affected, how painful it is, how what is the loss, how can you, by data collection you can understand this loss. Okay, so this is how the nature of psychological data is. And data are not independent. We have and context based. Yes, the context or situation, natural situations or any situations, you can we have discussed, and you can write as many situations. Everything uh, is a data. You can you can make anything into meaningful. You can observe anything, particularly related to human behavior. What is not what is not important to us? Everything. As you are dealing with human being, the behavior associated to human being, everything is really important. And types of data, yes, demographic information, the location, age, physical information related to uh, uh, the physical values like heart rate, age, uh, the color, physiological data. Yes, this is also related to the information which we cannot see, but we can calculate it. Psychological information, say for example, intelligence, when you are dealing with intelligence and anxiety, stress related, you can calculate that behavior, and then you can understand the numbers associated with them. We will be seeing uh, many other related things. Let us see what they are in the how they are analyzed. So data collection, the types of data we have done, demographic related, physical information, physiological information, psychological information. All these types of data will be important to understanding the overall picture of the particular human being. This will give you the 360 degrees, the overall complete. We will have a picture. We'll try to have a complete picture of the human being and his condition for the behavior, for, for the causes of that behavior, how we can help him or her coming out of the modification of that behavior. Important methods, that how can you collect the data? Yes, there are observation method, experimental method, correlational method, survey, psychological testing, case study. There are 6 methods which we will be seeing. Yes, these are detailedly explained in the earlier sessions. And in the observational method, particularly naturalistic observation and non-participant observation. These are the 2 types: naturalistic and controlled behavior, and participant and non-participant. These are in different contexts they can be used. And then it is the experimental method. So in the experimental method we have variable. We have the concept of variable. Variable is which varies, which have a change. Okay, in that, what are the types of variables? Independent, dependent, and extraneous variables. In the extraneous variables, there are different types that are organismic, situational, environmental variable, sequential variables. And what are the types of methods? Field experiment, quasi experiment, experimental. In that experimental, the types, experimental and control groups. This experimental group will have some conditions, control group will have some other conditions. In the naturalistic, as a procedure, application of one technique. So field experiments are like which are geographical, which can be like where the situations are not feasible in the laboratory, you can go for field experiments. Quasi experiments are special conditions. Next to that experimental method is correlation method, where and experimental method particularly deals with cause and effect, the effect of one variable on the other. Correlation method, it is like comparison, the relation between two variables, that is whether they are positive correlation, negative correlation, and there is no significant relationship. This explains the relationship between two variables. So this is what the correlation method is. And then next to it is survey method. In the survey method, there are 4 techniques involved, that is personal interviews. This is like face-to-face interaction, questionnaires. Yes, they can be paper-based questionnaire or digital-based questionnaires. Telephonic surveys based on the telephones or of mobile devices. Controlled observation. This is also similar to a confined environment related to the observation, that is participant or non-participant. You can recall the observation method in the whole method, which is available in as a separate session. And then next to it is personal interview. Personal interview is dealing with this uh, like techniques separately. In the personal interviews, there are 4 types, that is individual to individual, one to one, individual to one to many, many to one, and many to many. These are the types of interviews which we can conduct to the particular participants. Questionnaire survey, the types of questionnaires, open-ended and closed-ended. There can be options available, scales you can create as a scales. Telephone survey, opinion based on the SMS and choices, you can collect the data. And then is the psychological testing. This is the uh, last but one technique, that is standardized psychological testing. And psychological testing mostly dependent on particularly reliability, validity, and the norms. These are very detailedly explained, and these are really important for any psychological test to be standardized and making it as an instrument. And what are the types of tests? Yes, verbal test, non-verbal test, and performance test. There can be speed test, power test also types of tests available. And uh, based on the context, we will be and the education of the participant. If he is not uneducated, you can use non-verbal or performance test. If he is educated, you can use verbal and performance test. Verbal test, you can say, generally in a career counseling, you can have an aptitude, and for intelligence test, you can measure the calculation speed, mathematical ability, and based on the knowledge or the cultural conditions, you will decide that which test is suitable for him or her. Next to it is case study method. It is particularly one case or the similar types of cases you'll be dealing with, an in-depth study of a particular case and research process on critical information like a cancer and some conditions. You can put it as a case study. Now there is some special situation, you can also uh, make it as a case study. This is the one. And next to it, these are the 6 techniques useful for the collecting data. And then after collecting data, we have to analyze the data, make sense out of it. And that is analysis. There are 2 types, that is based on the method which we use, the data is dependent on that. That is quantitative and qualitative. Quantity, it is numbers based. You can make some values. Qualitative, it is understandable then. It is like quantitative is brain and qualitative is mind. Uh, Say it is like we can make some relation. Limitations of psychological inquiry. So then, yeah, even though we say that very near experience, very near, the data can be nearer to the behavior, but it is not completely the exact thing. As we are human beings, as a complex one, we cannot understand everything, but we will try to be very close to such understanding. That is lack of zero or true point. That is, no one is zero knowledgeable. It is the DNA has a memory. Relative nature of psychological tool. Every tool is not completely, and the selection of the tools are also very different based on it. Subjective interpretation of qualitative data. Yes, qualitative data, it is like a mind, as I said. So we have to be very qualified and interpretative method. In that naturalistic behavior, you cannot completely have, and there can be decision bias. There may be some like completely judgmental based. So you have to take others help in interpreting that behavior. Either even the participants has also have the right whether that prediction is true or not. And there can be ethical issues. Either like these are the consents for the participant. So the participant has to be completely comfortable, and they have to be informed what they are they will be testing or examined or interviewed. They have to be explained very clearly, and the results has to be shared to them. How to be meaningful. Confidentiality, yes. If there is any information which the client uh, think that they cannot disclose the information like a personal name, location, or any other personal information. So that has to be saved. That has to be properly managed. So this is a conclusion revision of unit 2, and let us see what are the activities. So activities and review questions, let us see what are all there in the unit 2. So see that these are the key terms. As you have seen in the past, uh, so far we have discussed many terms Like try to recall the meanings of this term case study. What is a case study? Confidentiality, control group, experimental group. I think yes, here the experimental group is there. Correlational research. Uh, this is the technique method. Data deep data. What do you mean by data? Debriefing. Brief. Like what is this method? Dependent variable. What is a variable? Validity. So these are the terms which will make you familiar with. Just try to get the definition of these terms, hypothesis, norms, and you will have good command over the this unit. Okay, next. There is a two activity. There are 5 activities. Let us see them one by one. What is the first activity? A few students can observe one period. This is related to observation technique, that is observational method. And when the psychology teacher is teaching the class, like it is a classroom observation, note down in detail what the teacher does. Like what are the techniques used, what are the methods he used. It is the explaining the class, what the students do, the like attention, you can say attention, anxiety of the students, uh, the behavior of the students, whether they are attentive or playful, their facial expressions, how their reaction, the reaction time. There are a lot of things you can be observed. The effect of the environment, if there is any sound pollution, which affects the class, all these things can be observed. And the entire pattern of interaction between the teachers and students, discuss the observations made with the other students and teacher, note the similarities and differences in observation, how the teachers behave and students behave. Teacher will be teaching, students will be listening. This is delivery method, this is receiving method. So all these things, just write down what you have observed in a classroom. Next to it is activity 2.2. This is the second activity. Identify the independent and dependent variables from the given. This is related to experiment method. We have discussed the variables that are independent variables and dependent variables. For example, teachers' classroom behavior affects students' performance. Students' performance, yes, the teacher's classroom behavior is the independent variable and student. If the classroom behavior changes, the student performance changes. Yes, performance is dependent on this independent variable, and this variable can be modified like a geography class, psychology class, economics, business class hour. You can modify this teacher and you can see the performance, whether it is increasing or decreasing. So likewise, you can try 10 to 20 examples and try to understand what are the independent and dependent variables. Healthy parent children relationship facilities emotional adjustment. So what is the independent variable and dependent variable? There can be more than 2 independent variables or 2 dependent variables. Let us see, and there can be extraneous variables which we have discussed. Environmental variables, or there are types we have discussed. So let us see, just practice them. Okay, next activity 2.3. An investigator wants to study people's attitude towards welfare programs by circulating a questionnaire via the internet. So this is a questionnaire method using a technology. Is the study likely to reflect the views of general population accurately? Why or not? If it is, if it is accurately reflecting how the people are get close attention, how the results are. If it is not, just explain them. Okay, so this is a simple activity, try to complete it. Next it is activity 2.4. Take a test with its manual and read it carefully and identify the problem. Yes, there can be in the laboratory, in the psychological lab, you have types of tests. There can be this test, as we have discussed. In a psychological test, it is standardized and objective instrument. In a psychological test, what you will be like you will be having, you can say how the test is designed, what are the questions involved, what is the method it is used, What are the reliability, validity and norms? Whether it is replicable and what are the norms, like for which area it is applicable, the types of test, what is the type, it is verbal type or non-verbal, whether it is administered to the individual or it can be applied to a group, whether it is speed, power or mixed, any other characteristics. You can take a simple test like a Segwin form board, like a stress test, Beck's stress anxiety scale is there. You can observe this, and even you can take a research paper and observe which type of method is used in that particular research. You can have a research gate, scientific science direct, American Psychologist Association, they will have Indian Psychologist Association, different journals will have research articles. In that articles, they will be using some scales. You can get all these things in that research paper or the article, psychological articles. You can read them and you can observe. Just try to take 4 to 5 articles and observe, identify the variables, apply your knowledge, what you have learned. Next to it is activity 2.5. In this, identify the most appropriate method of inquiry for the following research. In the whether it is observation method, experimental method, psychological testing, survey, and correlation method. What you can, whether you can say what are the different types of used can be used, whether more than one method is applicable, whether the method is not suitable, you can decide. Does noise influence the problem solving ability of the people? How can you, will you put a questionnaire based on the noise? Will you observe like a bystanders effects of the smoke experiment? Should there be dress code for college students? Like, will you use an interview method or a survey method? Attitude of the students, parents towards homework. How can you use, whether it is questionnaire based or interview based or observation based, or you can put experimental and control group. Studying behavior of the student in a play group. Will you use an observation method or interview method? Tracing the major life events of your favorite leader. Tracing, it is like you have to collect all the data, how you will be using, whether interviewing his relatives, observing the locations, going back to his memories. All these things can be done. Which method, what you feel, just try to write them and let us discuss. Okay, next. Review questions. Yes, try to write a maximum 2 A4 sheets. What are the goals which we have discussed earlier? Goals, steps involved, like identifying the problem, data collection, and selecting a method, reviewing the decisions, recollection, all these things with the steps, nature of psychological data, independent data is very important, types of data, you can write, there are 5 important points in the nature of psychological data we have discussed earlier in the session also, and just refer the textbook and you can get everything. How do experimental and control group differ? Yes, try to uh, go to the experimental method, experimental technique which is used, and get some differences, and try to read articles based on the experimental. You can get more data, and you can read the bystanders effect and try to come up with a own example. Okay, researchers studying the relationship between, yes, whether you use a correlation or experimental study or observation, just, and here asking, formulate a relevant hypothesis, make a hypothesis, effect of speed, cycling speed on the people. Okay, people aggression, people reaction, or response. The speed increases, the response increases. Like they give way. Like that, you can formulate your own hypothesis. Try to make a good uh, like steps how you want to study this one. Discuss the strengths and weakness of experimental method. Even like the fourth question, you can just refer this question. And next, Krishnan is going to observe and record children's play behavior at a nursery school without attempting to influence or control the behavior. Like whether it is participative method or non-participative method, just go through the example and write your own process and how benefit is that method or how you are not agreeing with that method. Just why and why not. Give two examples of the situation where survey method can be used. Yes, there can be population survey, election survey, or opinion based polls. You can write as many examples as you can. Just select two of them and write this one on your own words or just refer the textbook. Differentiate between interview and a questionnaire. Interview is a one-to-one. Questionnaire is interview also. There are four types of interview, but it is in person. Questionnaire, there cannot be a in person. You can use any device. Like these are the differences. Just go to the textbook and write the differences which you have feel and explain. Try to explain the interview method and the questionnaire method and write the differences. Characteristics of a standardized test. Yes, the test should be standardized. And characteristics, reliability, validity, and norms. And what are the important points to be standardized? These are the points you have to discuss. Go to your psychological testing and revisit the lesson, read it properly, and you can get the answer. Everything is available in the textbook. You don't have to worry at all. Every question is answerable. Describe the limitations. Yes, the last but one topic, limitations. There is no true point value. There is no subjective data. That is interpretative method. And these are the limitations which you have three limitations discussed in the textbook. You can refer the references, the other references, textbooks available. You can write accordingly. Ethical guidelines, ethics, yes, about the data, privacy, participation, volunteering, disclosure of the results, all these things, please explain them and write the answer. So next to it is project ideas. After getting overall things, you can participate in the project ideas. These are really simple and this will give you the practical knowledge how the researchers work. This is very good examples they have given to elevate your knowledge and application of that knowledge. Conduct a survey. You have gone through the survey techniques, that is interview, questionnaire, observation, and psychological testing. You can use any methods which are suitable for you and conduct a survey after school activities, post school, what the people do of class 5 and class 9. Take class 5, these will be the 5 to 6, generally 5 plus 4, 9 to 10 years. Class 9 will be 12 to 13 years. How these students behave and how these students. Taking a sample of 10 students in each. 5th class students, 10 people, 9th class students, 10 people. Find information about their time devoted. Like if you want to administer questionnaire with these students, you can collect the data and studying, playing, television. These are the factors. You can create a questionnaire or you can observe what they are doing. Yeah, whatever method you want to, just try to observe the students, record the behavior, and what are the findings between these two players. What is the 5th class student is doing? 5th class student may watch cartoons much. Class 9 students, he will be doing much of the work. Class 5 will be playing, less playing. The difference, more detailed, less details. Just try to draw some conclusions. This will give you a good application of knowledge. Next to it, there is a second method. Conduct a study in your group to see the effect of recitation. This is one more example. Conduct a study. You have to, this is like an experiment. Experimental and controlled group or correlating between two groups. Take 10 6 years old, 10 6 years old, 10 people, 6 years of age, and divide them into two groups, like each into 5 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. These are of 2 6 age groups. Give group 1 a new poem and instruct them to read it loudly for 15. Read loud for group 1. This is group 1. This is group 2. Take group 2 and give them the same new poem. This is also new poem, but instruct them to read, not to read loudly, read without shouting. After 15 minutes, try to make them read, and care needs to be taken to see that the both groups are dealt with separately, like in a separate classrooms, or after conducting first experiment, first group, you can go with the second group, deal with group 1 for 1 day, group 2 second day. But you will have data, right? Observational data. But after the recall has taken place, note down the observation. Identify what method of research you used, whether it is observation method, questionnaire method, reciting, how you want to recite, how you want to examine the recall, whether you want to put a descriptive test, oral recitation, etc. Hypothesis, variables, you can create that based on this, based on the like effect of recitation on learning poetry, what type of recitation, whether the method, like you can say reading it loud or reading it not slowing down. So reading loud affects the recitation, whether it is positive way or negative way. You have to find it by using this experiment. Okay, compare notes with other groups and share the result with your teacher in the class. Yes, here you can do it with Zoom based, or after the lockdown you can observe it. But so far you can try to do it on a online based. You can ask the children around your home. You can complete these things. Okay, any discussions you can write to us. I think this is the end for this session. Yes. Thank you so much for your participation. If you have any queries, please write to us. You can call, you can chat up, and then please reach us whenever you feel comfortable. All the best for your unit 2, and I hope this revision session will be very useful. Try to come up with your doubts, and let us proceed with the next unit in the next session. Thank you so much. Have a great day.